English. Your English ancestors should have died in those dark winters where the sun barely showed up. Somehow they didn't, and the reason is coded in genes that still work today, unless you spend your life indoors. The hidden advantage of English genetics starts with something most people mistake for a weakness. That pale skin everyone complains about is actually a vitamin D factory optimized for low sunlight. When ultraviolet rays are scarce, darker skin can't produce enough vitamin D to support bone health and immune function. Your skin pulls it from light so dim that other populations would be running a deficit for half the year. The British Isles get maybe 6 hours of true daylight in December, and your ancestors' biology learned to extract every molecule of usable vitamin D from that. Then there's milk. Most adult humans lose the ability to digest lactose after childhood, but English genetics kept the lactase gene active into adulthood. That's not a small thing. Milk provided portable nutrition, water, calories, and calcium in a region where food was scarce and preservation was hard. Being able to drink it as an adult meant your ancestors survived when others starved. Your body also burns fat differently. Populations that relied on meat and fish developed stronger fat-burning systems and more heat-generating brown fat, the kind that keeps you warm without shivering. That's why cold tolerance shows up more in people with English ancestry. The downside hits when you leave those conditions. Your skin burns fast under strong sun, and if you're indoors under artificial lighting, your vitamin D production tanks. What worked in gray, cold Britain becomes a problem almost anywhere else. Irish. The Irish have a genetic mutation that would put most people in the hospital, but it's the exact reason they survived plagues that wiped out entire populations around them. The mutation sits in a gene called HFE, and it increases iron absorption from food. For most people, absorbing too much iron causes serious damage to the heart and liver. But for the Irish, that extra iron helped fight off blood-borne infections during centuries of plague and famine. When your body has more iron available, your immune cells use it to kill bacteria and viruses more effectively. The trade-off was worth it because dying from infection was a bigger threat than dying from iron overload. Your pale skin works the same way it does for the English, producing vitamin D from limited sunlight, even on the cloudiest days. The Irish also developed strong lung capacity from generations of physical labor in damp, cold climates, and your ability to digest milk as an adult came from a herding culture that depended on dairy. Irish genetics adapted to survive famines, which means your body is extremely efficient at storing energy when food is available. That helped during starvation, but it works against you now. Modern abundance turns that survival mechanism into a risk for weight gain and metabolic issues. And the HFE gene doesn't stop causing problems once the infections are gone. If you inherit 2 copies, you're at risk for hemochromatosis, a condition where excess iron damages your organs slowly. Even 1 copy can elevate iron levels enough to stress your liver and heart if you're not paying attention. Italian. There are villages in Italy where living past 100 happens so often, it breaks every statistical model. Scientists finally found out why, and it's sitting in their DNA. The longevity comes from genes inherited from ancient hunter-gatherer populations that mixed with early farmers thousands of years ago. Those genes are unusually good at repairing cellular damage, which is what aging mostly is. Italians who live past 100 tend to carry variants that keep their DNA repair systems working longer than most people's do. Skin pigmentation in Italy follows a gradient. Northern Italians have lighter skin suited for lower UV exposure, while Southern Italians have darker skin that blocks more ultraviolet damage. That graduated protection helped your ancestors adapt to different levels of sunlight without losing the ability to produce vitamin D where it was still needed. Diet plays into your genetics too. Italians carry enzyme variants optimized for metabolizing olive oil and wine, 2 staples of the Mediterranean diet. Those enzymes help you break down fats and antioxidants more efficiently, which likely contributes to lower inflammation and better cardiovascular health. High genetic diversity is another part of Italian heritage. Italy sits at a crossroads between Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, so your ancestry picked up a wide range of immune genes. That diversity makes it easier for Italians like you to fight off a variety of different diseases. The trade-off shows up mostly in people from southern Italy, where certain blood disorders like thalassemia are more common. It's a genetic adaptation to malaria that was useful when the disease was widespread, but causes health problems now that malaria is gone. Scandinavian. Vikings raided half the known world in conditions cold enough to kill most armies. Turns out they had a biological advantage nobody talks about, and you can still measure it today. Scandinavian genetics includes superior oxygen utilization, meaning your body extracts and uses oxygen from each breath more efficiently than most populations. When researchers test VO2 max, the measure of how much oxygen your body can use during exercise, Scandinavians consistently score higher on average, meaning they tend to be better at endurance activities. It's not because of training, it's because of biology. Cold adaptation goes deeper than just tolerating low temperatures. Your body can convert white fat, the kind that stores energy, into brown fat, which generates heat. Most populations lose that ability after infancy, but Scandinavians retain more of it. That's why cold exposure doesn't bother you the way it does for people from warmer climates. Height and cardiovascular strength both trace back to this same genetic background. Scandinavians tend to be taller, with larger hearts and stronger circulation, traits that developed in environments where physical endurance determined survival. Like the English and Irish, pale skin and the ability to digest milk as an adult round out the package. Both are adaptations to low sunlight and a diet heavy in dairy, which was one of the few reliable food sources during long winters. The downside is predictable. Your fair skin burns fast under strong sun, and living indoors under artificial light tanks your vitamin D production. Your genetics assume you're outside in natural light regularly, and modern life doesn't do that. Eastern European. Ever see the movie Rocky IV? Dolph Lundgren's Ivan Drago wasn't just Hollywood. Eastern European genetics come with broader frames, denser muscle, and raw power most people can't match even after years in the gym. Researchers know there's a clear difference, but still don't fully understand why. Eastern Europeans carry genetic variants that build muscle more easily and maintain it with less effort. That includes both the size of muscle fibers and how efficiently they contract, which translates to raw strength. It's why Eastern European athletes dominate in powerlifting, strongman competitions, and throwing events where pure force matters more than speed. The ability to manage inflammation is another strength. Your ancestors dealt with constant physical stress on harsh, open plains, and the genetics that survived are better at handling swelling and recovering from tissue damage. That's useful for both manual labor and athletic performance. Your height is part of the same package. Eastern Europeans tend to be taller on average, likely because larger body mass helped with heat retention in freezing climates. Your body also burns fat more efficiently when temperatures drop, which kept your ancestors alive during brutal winters on the steppe. The problem is that your genetics don't adapt well to modern processed food. Eastern European populations tend to start with higher baseline cholesterol levels, and when you add in junk food and a sedentary lifestyle, weight gain and cardiovascular issues happen faster than they do for other groups. Latin American. Conquest tried to wipe them out, disease tried to finish the job. Instead, the survivors ended up with immune systems no single continent ever produced. And that mixed heritage is why certain infections never touch you, while they take everyone else out for days. Latin American ancestry blends European, Native American, and African genetics, and that combination creates immune advantages none of those groups had alone. When you inherit immune genes from 3 different ancestral populations, your body can recognize and respond to a much wider range of pathogens. That's not just theoretical. Studies show that people with mixed ancestry tend to have stronger and more flexible immune responses than people from genetically homogeneous populations. That mixed ancestry also affects your metabolism. Depending on which genes you inherited, your body might handle carbohydrates like Native American populations, store energy efficiently like African populations, or burn fat like Europeans. That variety helped your ancestors survive when food sources changed unpredictably, which they did constantly during colonization and its aftermath. Fuel storage is the other side of that coin. When your ancestors faced repeated famines and food insecurity, bodies that stored energy efficiently survived. What kept populations alive during conquest and starvation works against you now when food is everywhere and physical activity is optional, putting you at higher risk for obesity and type 2 diabetes. Native American. Your ancestors crossed 2 continents on foot at altitudes where most modern climbers would pass out. That's not just determination, that's oxygen efficiency coded into your genes. Native American populations migrated from Siberia across the Bering Strait and then spread from the Arctic to the southern tip of South America. That means adapting to every terrain type imaginable: frozen tundra, mountains, deserts, and rainforests. The genetics that survived are built for constant movement and extreme conditions. Your body uses oxygen more effectively than most populations, which shows up most clearly at altitude. The Tarahumara people of northern Mexico can run ultra distances barefoot without the cardiovascular strain that would cripple most endurance athletes. Studies show they use about 10% less oxygen to cover the same distance, which is a massive advantage in any endurance activity. Andean populations took it further. Living at high altitude for thousands of years produced stable blood oxygen levels and larger lung capacity even when the air is thin. Your body doesn't panic when oxygen drops because it's built to function in those conditions. Populations that survived long periods of food scarcity developed bodies built for storing calories, and that backfires hard in modern environments. Native American populations have some of the highest rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes in the world because their genetics assume food is scarce, not abundant. East Asian. You still get carded at age 50, and at 60, you look 30. East Asian genetics delay visible aging through cellular mechanisms that keep your skin, hair, and overall appearance looking decades below your actual age. The cellular repair systems in East Asian populations work differently than anywhere else. Your body fixes DNA damage and clears out worn-out cells more efficiently, which slows visible aging. That's why your skin stays smoother, hair stays thicker, and overall appearance holds up longer than it does for most other populations. The EDAR gene shows up at much higher rates in East Asian populations than in other ethnic groups. It produces thicker hair that blocks sun and rain, plus extra sweat glands that help you regulate temperature in humid heat, critical when your ancestors spent hours working rice paddies in tropical conditions. On top of that, about 80 to 95% of East Asians carry the ABCC11 gene variant, which means your sweat doesn't produce body odor the way it does for most other populations. You may sweat more, but it doesn't smell. Your ancestors relied on rice, vegetables, and plant-based fats for thousands of years, and your metabolism adapted to match. You break down carbohydrates and plant foods more efficiently than someone whose ancestors ate mostly meat and dairy. That same specialization is why most East Asians can't digest lactose as adults. Your genetics never needed to keep that ability because dairy wasn't part of the diet. Your body handles alcohol differently too. A variant in the ALDH2 gene affects how you break it down. If you carry this variant, drinking causes flushing, rapid heartbeat, and nausea. Your body's way of saying it can't process alcohol properly. It also increases your cancer risk if you drink regularly. Southeast Asian. Jungle heat and suffocating humidity wreck most people in hours. You handle it like you've got air conditioning built in. Southeast Asian genetics contain mechanisms that regulate body temperature and sweat efficiency in conditions that would destroy everyone else. A naturally leaner build maximizes skin surface area relative to body mass, which means more area to release heat. When ambient temperature is near body temperature, your only cooling option is evaporation through sweat, and having more surface area makes that process more efficient. Your internal sweat system works differently too. In humid environments, you lose salt fast if your sweat composition isn't right, but Southeast Asian genetics produce sweat that retains salt better, preventing the electrolyte imbalances that would shut down someone from a drier climate. Your ancestors lived in tropical jungles where they cultivated rice alongside root vegetables like taro and cassava. Like East Asians, you digest starches efficiently, but your body is specifically optimized for those tropical root vegetables, breaking them down faster to extract quick energy in high-heat environments. Dense jungle canopy and extreme heat created your skin tone too. You sit in a range that blocks enough ultraviolet radiation to prevent skin cancer, but doesn't trap heat the way darker skin would. Too much melanin would make it harder to cool down in an already sweltering environment, so the balance is specific to jungle life. The trade-off is that your skin doesn't produce much vitamin D, even in direct sunlight. That wasn't a problem when people spent all day outside, but modern indoor lifestyles create deficiencies. Your cold tolerance is also weak. Your body isn't built to generate or retain heat, and because your metabolism is tuned for lower-fat, carbohydrate-based diets, modern fast food causes rapid weight gain. South Asian. You go hours without eating while everyone else is hangry and useless. South Asian genetics gave you a metabolism that extracts every single calorie like your life depends on it, because, for generations, it did. Your ancestors lived across the Indian subcontinent for thousands of years, adapting to extreme heat, monsoons, and periods where food wasn't guaranteed. That shaped a body built for efficiency. You can function longer between meals without your energy crashing, and you stay productive in heat that would exhaust most people. Like East Asians and Southeast Asians, your ancestors relied heavily on rice. But across the Indian subcontinent, wheat was also a major part of the diet. Thousands of years eating both grains shaped your body to break down starches faster and extract more energy from carbohydrates, an adaptation that kept your ancestors alive during lean periods when food was scarce. Some South Asian populations also kept the ability to digest milk into adulthood, inherited from ancient herding cultures. Your skin adapted for constant sun exposure across tropical and subtropical climates. The melanin concentration blocks UV radiation without burning, protecting against skin cancer and slowing visible aging compared to lighter-skinned populations. You don't burn easily, and the damage from heat that destroys paler skin doesn't apply. The problem is that metabolic efficiency no longer matches the environment. When food is constant and physical activity drops, your body still behaves like famine is imminent. That drives weight gain concentrated around organs, insulin resistance, and metabolic disease, even when you don't look overweight by standard measures. West African. Less than 10 seconds. That's all it takes to separate you from everyone else on the planet. West African genetics load your muscles with fast-twitch fibers that generate explosive power nobody else can match. And every 4 years, the Olympic finals prove it again. The tropical regions of West Africa built bodies for explosive power over endurance. Hunting, evading predators, and moving through dense heat didn't favor stamina. They favored speed. Thousands of years in that environment shaped muscles fundamentally different from other populations. The ACTN3 gene is the specific mechanism. It produces a protein that makes fast-twitch muscle fibers contract harder and faster. West African populations carry this gene at significantly higher rates than most other groups. Fast-twitch fibers generate explosive power for short bursts, the kind you need for sprinting, jumping, and rapid acceleration. Nearly every Olympic sprint finalist has West African ancestry for this reason. The sickle cell gene adds another advantage that goes beyond athletics. A single copy of this gene gives you significant resistance against malaria, one of the deadliest diseases in tropical Africa. That gene kept your ancestors alive in regions where malaria killed millions. Your skin evolved for the same tropical environment. Dark skin does more than block UV radiation. It protects vitamins like B12 and folate from breaking down under intense sun. But sickle cell advantage carries risk. If you inherit 2 copies of the gene, it causes sickle cell disease, a painful and life-threatening blood disorder. Even with 1 copy, you're not immune to problems. It just doesn't show up until your body is under stress. Urban environments with fewer parasites also create issues because your immune system can overreact and cause inflammation where none is needed. Middle Eastern. The Sahara doesn't negotiate. 120-degree heat, no shade, and water you can count in sips. Middle Eastern genetics gave desert populations kidneys that hoard and recycle every molecule. While everyone else is dead by midday, you're still crossing sand. Your ancestors survived thousands of years in the Arabian Peninsula and North African deserts, where water scarcity and extreme heat killed anyone whose body couldn't adapt. That environment built kidneys that concentrate urine to the point where almost no water is wasted. Most people's kidneys aren't built to function that aggressively, which is why dehydration kills them faster in the same conditions. Your sweat system works differently too. You sweat less than most populations, and when you do, it evaporates more efficiently in dry heat. That keeps you cool without losing as much water. Milk digestion is another adaptation. Camel and goat milk provided hydration, calories, and nutrients in a region where almost nothing else was available. Being able to digest it as an adult meant survival when water sources dried up. Your body is also built to retain salt, which helps maintain blood pressure and fluid balance when you're sweating in extreme heat. Combined with darker skin tone that protects against UV damage and prevents vitamin breakdown under constant sun exposure, these adaptations made desert survival possible. But those same water-saving and salt-retaining adaptations create health risks in modern environments. High-sodium processed foods combined with kidneys that hold on to salt can cause high blood pressure and kidney damage. What kept desert nomads alive for thousands of years works against you when your diet changes, but your genetics don't. East African. The finish line of every major marathon looks the same: Kenyan and Ethiopian flags. East African genetics evolved at high altitude, creating oxygen efficiency that turns distance running into a biological monopoly. Living at high altitude for thousands of years forced adaptations most populations never developed. Your blood captures and uses oxygen more efficiently, even when there's less of it available. More red blood cells, higher hemoglobin levels, and more capillaries that deliver oxygen to muscles faster. Your cells also produce energy more efficiently to handle the demands of thin air and steep terrain. At sea level, you're operating with extra capacity nobody else has. Your body is built to function in thin air, so when oxygen is abundant, it's like racing with an unfair advantage. That's why East African runners dominate distance events. Slow-twitch muscle fibers dominate, which are built for endurance rather than explosive power. That's the opposite of West African genetics, which load up on fast-twitch fibers for sprinting. The two populations adapted to completely different physical demands, and the results show up clearly in athletic performance. The downside is high altitude itself. Thin air stresses developing babies and puts extra strain on kidneys during growth. Adults with thinner blood are also at higher risk for sudden drops in blood pressure, especially during dehydration or illness. Your genetics aren't random. They're survival tools your ancestors handed down. Most people have no idea the advantages they actually have.